Welcome back to The Haunted Beard, everybody. Thank you once again for joining me. My name is Jake. Today, I want to give you my review for Immaculate. This is a film that has been on my watch list, finally became available on demand. I gave it a watch. Wanted to give you my thoughts, so here we go. Cecilia, a woman of devout faith, is welcomed to the picture-perfect Italian countryside where she's offered a new role at a convent. But it becomes clear to Cecilia that her new home harbors dark and horrifying secrets. Now, I'm going to keep the majority of this review spoiler-free, but I am going to reserve a little bit of time at the end and get into some spoilers so I can kind of give you my full thoughts, but I'll be sure to warn you when spoilers are coming. But anyways, let's get into it. So the film stars Sydney Sweeney and is directed by Michael Muller, who also directed her in The Voyeurs, which came out a couple years ago. And overall, this one's kind of a mixed bag. And there's definitely some strong elements here. There's some stuff that works pretty good. There's some other stuff that just didn't really work for me. There is some pretty good stuff. There's also some stuff here that's just kind of stupid as well. And so the film opens up with a pretty nice opening scene that definitely grabs your attention. It's a bit shocking. It really kind of starts things off with a bang. Then we're introduced to Sydney Sweeney, who plays Cecilia. And this brings me to one of my first compliments for the film, in that being that she is an American, is now moved to Italy to serve at this convent, she barely speaks Italian, and pretty much everybody else only speaks Italian. And one of the things that the film did that I thought worked pretty good is it doesn't actually give you any of the subtitles when other characters are speaking Italian. And so it does a good job kind of putting you in her shoes and in her position. And so I thought that was a good decision because it makes you uncomfortable. And there's this disconnect and just this feeling of being foreigner and just out of place and not belonging. And so I thought that was a good decision there not to include the subtitles, as it just kind of helps make you see things through her eyes and really hear things through her ears as well. Now, the movie looks really nice. They clearly had a decent budget here. I mean, for the most part, it all takes place at this convent. And so you've got just this very old Catholic religious architecture and stuff like that. So just a lot of nice imageries, nice set design, production value and stuff like that. There's a handful of scenes that are lit by candlelight and stuff. And so the movie just kind of has a nice visual feel, ambiance to it. The atmosphere is also pretty well handled for the most part. There's some nice, just kind of off-putting, mysterious, creepy, and unsettling atmosphere. I think that's definitely one of the film's strengths. And I also really like the musical score here. It almost has this kind of operatic type feel to some of the songs and just this kind of very intense, kind of emotional type score that I think complemented the film quite well. And I also think that Sydney Sweeney's performance here is pretty solid as well. I mean, she's in pretty much every scene, just about, and so she really has to carry this thing on her back, and I think she does a pretty solid job. And especially as the film progresses and you get towards the end and the climax and stuff like that, her performance has to become more just physical, more emotional, more intense, and kind of crazy in certain aspects. And she does a good job. I think she definitely sells the performance. Her character is one that's just kind of easy to attach to and be sympathetic towards, as she's this young girl in this totally foreign place and just feels kind of lost and is eventually, confronted with some stuff to where she's having this inner conflict of trying to, figure out what she believes in and how to respond and what to do and just all that. And I think she does a pretty solid job overall. So while there definitely are some elements here in Immaculate that I enjoyed and thought worked pretty well, there's also some elements that didn't quite come together for me either. And if you have seen religious horror movies, there is definitely an element of familiarity to this. A handful of it feels kind of one note. There's not really much beyond the basic premise to where, she goes to this new convent and things just kind of get creepy and feel a little off, and just kind of some weird stuff starts happening. Now, speaking to some of that familiarity, there are definitely comparisons to be made here to something like A Rosemary's Baby. So if you've seen that, you're going to get some kind of similar vibes, although this film is not really in the same league as Rosemary's Baby. There's also some similar vibes to something like Suspiria, even though that's not a religious horror, but it is about a young girl who is in a new place and is realizing that the authorities of that place are up to something sinister and evil. So there's definitely some similarities there between those two movies and Immaculate. And so just from a story perspective, I wish there was a little bit more here. It's pretty kind of straightforward. There's not really much depth to it. I wish there would have been a little bit more, maybe just some more twists and turns and stuff like that. But it is just kind of a pretty basic story overall, and heads in a very sort of, to some degree, predictable fashion. Now, what ends up happening, and I don't think this is a spoiler because it's in the trailer, and it's definitely alluded to by the title of the movie, is that it is the Immaculate Conception. She is with child, she gets pregnant, but she's still a virgin. And so they see it as some sort of miracle. And so as the film progresses, things get darker and darker and weirder. But that's, for the most part, that's kind of all that it is, right? It's just like, okay, we know that the people here who are running the convent are up to no good. They're up to something sinister. And so really everything just kind of hinges on what exactly is going on. What's the final reveal? All right, I'm going to get into spoilers now. So if you haven't seen the film and plan on watching it, you have officially been warned. If you want to jump ahead to just my final concluding remarks and my final grade, go ahead and fast forward to the timestamp in the video. Okay, so as I said, everything kind of hinges on the big reveal of what exactly is going on. What you would typically expect is that she has been impregnated with the devil or the Antichrist or something satanic. But it turns out she's actually been impregnated with a clone of Jesus Christ. Now, even saying that kind of just makes me laugh because it just is kind of ridiculous. Not kind of, I mean, it just is ridiculous. Now, what happens is they actually have the nail from Christ on the cross that pierces hands or feet or whatever. They have the nail at the convent, and they were able to extract blood and flesh and DNA evidence off of this nail, and have been working on producing genetic clones of Jesus Christ. Now, that is just gotta be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And here's the thing, I like the idea of kind of subverting expectations, and it being that she's not actually impregnated with the devil, she's actually impregnated with the Savior, like the ultimate good instead of the ultimate evil. That's pretty cool. But the means by which they go about it are just ridiculous. So that reveal to me was just stupid. Now, I say that while at the same time, I did have some fun with the last 15 minutes or so of this movie, because she finally decides to exact some revenge on these horrible people. And so the last 15 minutes or so are kind of a fun watch and pretty satisfying to see her get her revenge on these people. And so you get some, you know, kind of some good gnarly bloody violence and some good kills and stuff like that. And again, she's an easy character to root for. And so you're just kind of cheering her on, and it is pretty satisfying to see some of these people get their due. And now finally, if you've seen this, obviously the big kind of topic of discussion is the very end. And, you know, for the most part, I thought it was a pretty gnarly ending. It's a pretty gutsy ending. It is pretty shocking. It makes sense given the context of the story. And it's something, though, that I kind of had a bit of a suspicion that something was going to happen with the child. So it wasn't like the most shocking thing I've ever seen. But, you know, I appreciate a horror movie having a pretty horrific ending. And also, too, Sydney Sweeney's performance in those last few minutes are really pretty impressive. I mean, she goes for broke and just totally owns it. So again, kudos for her. She does a pretty solid job. So overall, like I said, this is a pretty mixed bag. There are some pretty good elements here. A couple things I didn't mention earlier on, but there's a pretty solid, kind of disturbing dream sequence, although I guess technically it doesn't turn out to be a dream, but that's pretty well done. There's another sequence later on where she's kind of snooping about the convent and just kind of spying on things and lurking and stuff like that. And she ends up seeing someone that she knows, and I'll refrain from saying what happens, but that's also a pretty solid scene as well. But overall, I'm still a little bit more on the positive. I guess just kind of as an overall experience, I did enjoy it more than I didn't. And it's a movie that's just kind of going to be a one and done for me. It's not something I would really plan on returning to, but I'm still a little bit more on the positive. So I'm going to give this like a 6 out of 10. That might be being a little bit generous, but I still think it's at least worth a watch. And yeah, so those are my thoughts. Hit me up down below. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know what you thought about the ending as well, and if you liked it or not, and would love to hear from you. So anyways, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for watching. And if you got anything out of this video, go ahead and do me a favor and do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.